I was about to ruin my life for a man who didn't even know my name. The information trembling in my hand was going to cost me my life. My fingers shook just enough to crease the folded napkin as I placed it beside the leather menu at table 7. From across the dining room, it looked like a forgotten tip envelope. Up close, if he actually unfolded it, it was a grenade with the pin already pulled his survival, my destruction, maybe both. "Have you decided on your entrees this evening?" I asked, voice steady even though my heart was slamming against my ribs hard enough to bruise. His wife smiled at her phone screen, the yellow silk of her dress catching the amber glow of the chandeliers. She didn't look up, didn't need to. The message had already been sent. Beside her, Adonis Chavarria studied the wine list, with the calm of a man who owned the world in front of him. The high-backed leather chairs, the white marble floors, the crystal that caught light like captured stars. His tattooed hands were relaxed, fingers tracing the edge of the menu. He had no idea he had 90 seconds to live unless I'd just destroyed everything. Behind them, the windows framed the glittering sprawl of the city at night, a constellation of lives that would never intersect with mine. Except tonight, they already had. The first time I heard Adrian Dianda's voice, I was sitting on a closed toilet seat with my shoes pulled up off the floor like a kid hiding from a monster. It was 8:47 p.m. I knew because I'd been watching the minutes tick by on my phone, rationing my break like it was oxygen. In 7 hours, my shift would end. In 8, I'd be home. In 9, I could stop smiling. The bathroom door had opened with the kind of silence that only comes with money, custom hinges, weighted glass, everything engineered to be effortless. The heels that followed were Louboutin, red-soled and deliberate, each step a declaration of ownership. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Rich women didn't notice waitresses, especially not ones trapped in bathroom stalls during their breaks. Her phone rang once before she answered. No greeting, just immediate business. "I told you he's at the corner table, blue suit, by the orchids." The voice was cold. Not angry cold, but glacier cold, the kind that didn't waste heat on emotion. I heard the snap of a compact opening, the whisper of powder on skin. She was fixing her makeup while discussing what sounded like a meeting. Corporate people did that, I told myself. Coordinates and schedules and corner tables. No, he's distracted, reading the wine pairings like it matters. The laugh that followed made my skin crawl. It was the sound of someone who'd stopped pretending to care whether anyone liked her. "You have until dessert. After that, the security detail gets tighter." My fingers locked around my phone. Security detail. Not security team. Not bodyguards. Security detail was what you called the people protecting someone important enough to be a target. "Yes, I'll keep him there. I'll signal when he's settled." A pause, longer this time, like whoever was on the other end needed convincing. The yellow dress, like we discussed. "When I check my phone, you move." The faucet turned on, water hitting marble in sharp clinical bursts. Don't lecture me about exposure. He should have signed the accounts over when I asked nicely. Now he doesn't get a choice. My chest tightened. The words arranged themselves into something I didn't want to understand. 30 minutes. Don't miss. The door whispered shut behind her. I sat there for 2 full minutes, staring at nothing, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood, that it was code for something legitimate, that women in $3,000 dresses didn't plan hits in restaurant bathrooms. But I knew what I'd heard. And when I finally forced myself to stand, to smooth down my black skirt and check my reflection in the mirror, I looked exactly like what I was. A 26-year-old waitress who'd just accidentally overheard someone's murder being scheduled between the appetizer course and dessert. I should have walked out. Should have told my manager I was sick. Should have let whatever was about to happen, happen, because it wasn't my world and it sure as hell wasn't my problem. Instead, I grabbed a clean napkin from the counter and a pen from my apron pocket. My handwriting shook so badly I had to write it twice. "Your wife sold you out. They're in position. Now." Standing beside table 7 with that napkin tucked against the leather menu, I watched Adonis Chavarria's tattooed fingers lift the cover. His face didn't change. That was the first thing I noticed. No shock, no fear, nothing that would alert the woman sitting across from him that anything had shifted. But his hand moved. It happened so smoothly I almost missed it, his right hand sliding from the menu to the napkin, unfolding it beneath the table's edge where Adrian couldn't see. His eyes stayed on the wine list, tracking down the page like he was still deciding between the Bordeaux and the Barolo. I saw the exact moment he finished reading. His jaw tightened, just a flicker, a fraction of tension that appeared and vanished in the span of a breath. Then his gaze lifted, slow and deliberate, and found mine. His eyes were dark. Not brown, but almost black. The kind of dark that made it impossible to tell what he was thinking. And he was thinking, calculating, measuring, deciding what kind of threat or ally I was in the space of 3 seconds. "The lady will have the halibut," he said, voice smooth. Unbothered. "I'll take the ribeye rare." Adrienne glanced up from her phone just long enough to nod, already bored. "Excellent choice," I managed, and turned toward the kitchen. His hand caught my wrist. Not hard, not violent, but fast and absolute. The grip of someone who knew exactly how much pressure to apply to stop a person without bruising them. "Down," he said, and pulled. I didn't have time to understand before the world exploded. The sound came first. Not a crack, but a punch of air and glass. A shockwave that turned the elegant dining room into a spray of crystal and chaos. The wine glass on the table detonated, red liquid and glass shards erupting across the white linen. Then screaming. Someone's chair toppled backward. A woman shrieked. Silverware clattered to the marble floor like thrown dice. I was on the ground. Adonis's body curved over mine, his weight pinning me against the cold marble. His hand was on the back of my head, pressing my face down, shielding me with his shoulders and arms like I was something breakable. "Stay down," he said, low and urgent into my ear. "Don't move." Another sound. Sharper this time, closer. A second shot punched through the glass wall behind us, spiderwebbing the floor-to-ceiling window into 1,000 fractured pieces. Adrienne screamed. High and shrill and utterly convincing, like she hadn't orchestrated the whole thing 30 minutes ago in a bathroom stall. Somewhere behind us, men were shouting. Heavy footsteps his security detail, moving fast. Orders being barked and clipped, professional tones. "Sir, we need to move. Now." Adonis shifted, pulling me up with him. His hand still locked around my wrist, like he'd decided I was too valuable to lose, or too dangerous to leave behind. "She comes with us," he said. One of the security guys started to argue. "Sir, protocol. She comes." His tone didn't rise. Didn't need to. It was the voice of a man who'd spent his life giving orders and watching people obey. And then we were moving fast, low, through the chaos of overturned tables and panicked diners. His grip never loosened. He pulled me through the kitchen, past the stunned line cooks and the walk-in freezer, toward a service exit I didn't even know existed. The last thing I saw before we hit the night air was Adrienne, standing by the shattered table in her yellow dress, phone in hand, her face twisted into an expression of perfect, practiced shock. She looked right at me, and smiled. The night air hit my face like a slap, cold and sharp after the controlled climate of the restaurant. My lungs burned as Adonis pulled me through the service exit and into the alley, his hand still locked around my wrist like a handcuff. The alley smelled like garbage and exhaust, a stark contrast to the lavender and money I'd been breathing for the past 6 hours. My shoes cheap, non-slip, regulation black, skidded on something wet, and I stumbled. He didn't let me fall, just adjusted his grip and kept moving. "Wait," I started, but he cut me off. "Keep moving." 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows, guns drawn, faces hard and alert. They weren't running. They were sweeping, checking corners, covering angles like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "Perimeter secure," one of them said into his wrist. "Target is mobile." Target. He meant Adonis. A black SUV sat idling at the mouth of the alley, engine purring, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. The back door swung open before we reached it. "Get in," Adonis said. I planted my feet. "I need to go back. My purse, my keys." "Are you insane?" He turned to face me, and for the first time I saw something other than calm in his expression. It was fury, controlled and cold. "You just saved my life. Do you understand what that makes you?" I didn't. Not really. My brain was still trying to catch up to the fact that someone had just fired bullets through a restaurant window while I was taking dinner orders. "It makes you a witness," he continued, voice dropping lower. "It makes you the reason my wife's plan failed. And it makes you the first person she's going to eliminate the second she has the chance." The words settled into my chest like stones. Behind us, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. My voice cracked. I know what you did." His eyes held mine, and there was something in them now. Something that looked almost like respect. "And now you're going to get in the car and let me make sure you live long enough to regret it." One of the security guys appeared at his elbow. "Sir, we need to move. Now. NYPD is 2 minutes out, and we don't know if the shooters are still in position. Adonis didn't break eye contact with me. Last chance. You can stay here, talk to the cops, tell them what you know, and be dead by morning. Or you can get in the car. It wasn't really a choice. I got in the car. The interior was all black leather and bulletproof glass. The kind of vehicle that cost more than my entire life savings. Adonis slid in beside me, and the door shut with a heavy, final thunk that sounded like a vault closing. Go, he said to the driver. The SUV lurched forward, tires squealing as we shot out of the alley and onto the main street. I twisted in my seat, looking back at the restaurant. Red and blue lights were already converging, police cars screeching to a halt in front of the entrance. People spilled onto the sidewalk, some crying, some on their phones. All of them safe. All of them going home tonight. My sister, I said suddenly. Panic spiking through the adrenaline. I need to call my sister. No phones. The security guy in the passenger seat didn't turn around. Nothing traceable. She's at NYU. She's alone. She doesn't know. We'll handle it, Adonis said, and pulled out his own phone. He didn't ask for her name, didn't ask for permission. He just dialed, spoke low and fast in Spanish to whoever answered, then rattled off what I realized, with a jolt, was Maya's dorm address. I'd never told him where she lived. He ended the call and looked at me. 2 of my men are already en route. She'll be secured within the hour and brought to a safe location. How did you... I know everything about everyone who walks into my sightline, he said simply. It's how I'm still alive. The SUV swerved hard, throwing me against the door. Through the windshield, I caught a glimpse of another vehicle, dark sedan, windows down, someone leaning out with something long and metallic catching the streetlights. Contact, 3 o'clock, the security guy barked. The driver didn't hesitate. He yanked the wheel, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic and blowing through a red light. Horns blared. Brakes squealed. We fishtailed around a corner, and I grabbed the handle above the door, knuckles white. They're persistent, Adonis said, almost conversational. I'll give them that. The back window suddenly starred with cracks, a spider web of fractured glass that held together but didn't shatter. Bulletproof, he added, seeing my expression. Relax. Relax. The man had just told me to relax while someone was actively shooting at us. The driver took another sharp turn, then another, weaving through the city streets with the kind of precision that said he'd trained for this. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 3 minutes, the sedan disappeared from view. Lost them, the security guy confirmed, taking the long route to the estate. Estate. Not house, not apartment. Estate. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to slow my heartbeat. My uniform was torn at the shoulder. I didn't remember when that happened. There was a smear of something dark on my sleeve wine, I hoped, and not blood. I should have just called the police, I whispered. Adonis turned to me, and his expression was unreadable. The police wouldn't have believed you in time. I would be dead. And you... He paused, something shifting behind his eyes. You would have spent the rest of your very short life wishing you'd minded your own business. Maybe I should have. But you didn't. He leaned back against the leather seat, studying me like I was a puzzle he hadn't expected to encounter. Why? I didn't have a good answer. Not one that made sense. So I told him the truth. Because I couldn't just let you die. Something changed in his face then. Not softness, exactly, but a crack in the armor, a glimpse of the human underneath the cartel boss. Well, he said quietly, now we're even. Because I'm not going to let you die either. Through the back window, I could see the city lights fading as we headed away from Manhattan, toward wherever his estate was, toward whatever came next. Behind us, somewhere in that glittering sprawl of buildings and lives, Adrienne Deonda was spinning her story, playing the traumatized wife, setting up her next move, and I was trapped in a bulletproof SUV with a man whose tattooed hands were the only thing standing between me and a bullet with my name on it. The driver's voice cut through the silence. Eat it 20 minutes, sir. Adonis nodded, then looked at me one more time. Welcome to my world, Lisa Gunnan, he said. Try not to die in it. It wasn't until later that I realized he'd known my name all along. The gates were 12 feet tall and made of iron that looked like it could stop a tank. They swung open silently as we approached, revealing a long driveway that cut through manicured grounds lit by soft landscape lighting. Trees lined the path, their branches forming a canopy overhead, blocking out the sky. I couldn't see the house at first. Just darkness and the glow of lights in the distance, getting closer with each passing second. Then the trees opened up and there it was. Fortress was the right word. The estate sprawled across what looked like acres of land, all stone and glass and sharp architectural lines. Security lights illuminated the perimeter. Cameras tracked our approach from mounted positions I could barely see. This wasn't a home, it was a compound. The SUV pulled into a circular drive and stopped in front of massive double doors. Before I could reach for the handle, someone opened it from the outside, another man in a dark suit, another hard face, another gun bulge under his jacket. My legs shook when I stepped out. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion and a terror so deep I could taste it. Adonis was beside me in an instant, his hand on my elbow, steadying me. Easy. I need to know she's safe. My voice came out broken. Maya, I need to know. Come inside, he said. And it wasn't a command this time. It was almost gentle. The interior was just as intimidating as the exterior. Marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers. A grand staircase curved up to a second floor. Everything was clean lines and expensive taste, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself because it was woven into every surface. But I barely registered any of it. My mind was stuck on my sister, alone in her dorm room, unaware that her life had just been turned upside down because I'd decided to play hero. Adonis led me through the foyer and into what looked like an office, dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that probably cost more than my car. He pulled out his phone and dialed without hesitation. Status, he said in Spanish, then listened. His expression didn't change, but I watched his shoulders relax fractionally. Bring her here. No stops. And Carlos, he paused. Make sure she's not scared. He ended the call and turned to me. They're with her now. She's safe. They'll have her here within the hour. The relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of his desk, breathing hard, trying not to cry. Sit, Adonis said, gesturing to a leather chair. I sat. Not because he told me to, but because standing was suddenly impossible. He moved to a cabinet on the far wall and poured something amber into a crystal glass. When he brought it to me, his tattooed fingers brushed mine. Drink. I took a sip. Whiskey, smooth and expensive, burning its way down my throat. I coughed, and he almost smiled. Almost. Not a whiskey drinker? Not a getting shot at drinker, I said, and took another sip because my hands needed something to do. He pulled up another chair and sat across from me, elbows on his knees, studying me with that same unreadable intensity he'd had in the restaurant. Up close, in better light, I could see the details I'd missed before. The tattoos weren't random, they were deliberate, telling stories I didn't know how to read. A cross on his left hand, script along his neck that disappeared beneath his collar. His jaw was sharp, his eyes dark and steady, and there was a scar cutting through his right eyebrow that made him look dangerous even when he wasn't moving. You're wondering why I brought you here, he said. I'm wondering why you didn't just leave me at the restaurant. The whiskey was making me brave. Or stupid. You could have let the cops handle it. The cops would have taken your statement, sent you home, and you'd be dead before sunrise. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. Adrienne doesn't leave loose ends. And right now, you're the loosest end she's ever had. So what am I supposed to do? Hide here forever? For now. He leaned back, and I caught a glimpse of exhaustion in his face, a weariness that hadn't been there before. Until I deal with her. The way he said deal with made my stomach twist. She's your wife. On paper. His voice hardened. It was a merger, not a marriage. Her family needed legitimacy. Mine needed connections. We both got what we wanted, and for 5 years, we stayed out of each other's way. What changed? I started consolidating power, moving operations, cutting out the parts of the business I didn't want to be in anymore. He paused, something dark crossing his expression. She saw it as weakness. Thought if she eliminated me, she could take over everything and run it her way. Which is brutal, bloody, everything I've been trying to move away from. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, and I noticed his knuckles were scarred. I've done terrible things, Lisa. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but I'm trying to build something different. Adrienne wants to burn it all down and rule the ashes. I didn't know what to say to that. This man, this cartel boss with blood on his hands and ink on his skin, was talking about redemption, like it was something he actually believed in. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know who you saved. He met my eyes. And because you're going to be here for a while. Might as well understand what you're in the middle of. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood. They're here. Your sister. I was out of the chair before I could think, following him through the house to the front entrance. The doors opened and Maya stumbled in, wide-eyed and terrified, flanked by 2 security guards who looked more like soldiers. "Lisa!" She ran to me, and I caught her, wrapping my arms around her smaller frame. "I'm okay," I whispered into her hair. "You're okay. We're okay." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Nothing about this was okay. Over Maya's shoulder, I saw Adonis watching us, his expression unreadable. One of his men approached him, speaking low and fast. Adonis nodded, said something back, then dismissed him with a gesture. When the guard left, Adonis turned back to us. His face had shifted into something softer, almost human, like seeing me with my sister reminded him that people could care about something other than power and survival. "There are rooms prepared for both of you on the 2nd floor," he said. "Everything you need should be there. If it's not, tell someone." Maya looked between us, confused and scared. "Lisa, what's going on? They said there was danger. That we had to come here. Who is this?" I didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know how to explain that I'd overheard a murder plot in a bathroom stall and now we were trapped in a cartel boss's fortress because his wife wanted us dead. Adonis saved me from having to try. "I'm the man who's going to keep you both alive," he said simply. Then he looked at me. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we figure out how to end this." He left before I could thank him. Before I could ask him what "end this" actually meant. Before I could tell him that despite everything, the guns, the chase, the terror, I'd seen something in him that I hadn't expected. Something that looked almost like honor. Maya tugged on my sleeve. "Lisa, I'm scared." "Me too," I admitted, and led her upstairs to whatever sanctuary we could find in this beautiful, dangerous place. The bedroom was bigger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, revealing rolling lawns and precisely trimmed hedges that disappeared into darkness. The bed was a king, draped in linens that probably cost more per thread than I made in a week. There was a walk-in closet stocked with clothes in exactly my size, jeans, sweaters, dresses I'd never have occasion to wear. The bathroom had heated floors and a rainfall shower and tiny bottles of products I couldn't pronounce. It was a prison made of marble and money. I stood at the window for a long time, watching the security guards patrol the perimeter, their silhouettes moving between pools of light. They were keeping threats out, but they were also keeping us in. Maya had fallen asleep almost immediately in the room next to mine, exhaustion overriding fear. I'd sat with her until her breathing evened out, stroking her hair like I used to when she was little and scared of thunderstorms. She'd asked me 3 times if we were safe. I'd lied 3 times and told her yes. Now it was past midnight, and sleep felt impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the wine glass exploding, heard the punch of bullets through glass, felt Adonis's weight covering me, protecting me, while his world fell apart. I picked up one of the sweaters from the closet cashmere, butter soft, tags still attached, and pulled it on over my ruined uniform. I hadn't changed out of my work clothes, hadn't showered, couldn't bring myself to settle in, like that would make this real. My phone was gone, confiscated by security the moment we'd arrived. Protocol, they'd said. No traceable devices, no contact with the outside world, no way for anyone to find us, or for us to call for help. I was testing the window lock's automatic, controlled by a security system I didn't understand when I heard the knock on my door. Soft, tentative. "Lisa?" Maya's voice, small and scared. I opened the door and she stood there in borrowed pajamas, clutching a pillow. Her eyes were red. "Can't sleep?" I asked. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those men." She stepped inside and sat on the edge of the massive bed, looking tiny against all that luxury. "The ones who came to get me, they had guns, Lisa. Actual guns. And they knew my name. They knew my schedule. They knew which building I lived in." I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "They were protecting you. From what?" "You still haven't told me what's really happening." Because I didn't know how. Didn't know how to explain that I'd stumbled into something so far beyond our world that we might never find our way back. "I overheard something I shouldn't have," I said carefully. "And now some dangerous people want to make sure I don't talk." "What did you hear?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "Lisa, I'm handling it." She pulled away from me, frustrated. "You always do this. Always act like you have to protect me from everything. I'm 20 years old. I'm not a kid anymore. You're my kid sister. That doesn't change. And what happens when you can't protect me?" Her voice cracked. What happens when whoever's after you decides to go through me to get to you? I didn't have an answer for that. The thought had been circling my mind since the moment those bullets shattered the restaurant windows. Try to sleep, I said instead. We're safe here, I promise. Another lie. I was collecting them like debts. She left reluctantly, and I was alone again with the silence and the luxury and the fear that settled into my bones like cold. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to daylight streaming through the windows and something vibrating beneath my pillow. I sat up, confused, my hand closing around something small and hard. A phone. Not mine. A cheap burner. The kind you could buy at any convenience store with cash. The screen was lit with a single notification. One new message. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to open it. Didn't want to see what was waiting on that screen. But my thumb moved anyway, unlocking the phone, opening the message. It was a photo. Maya's dorm building. Taken from across the street, the angle suggesting whoever had shot it had been standing in the parking lot, watching. The timestamp was from yesterday evening, hours before Adonis's men had extracted her. Below the image, a single line of text. Next time, I won't miss. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I stared at the screen, at the building where my sister had been sleeping, unaware, vulnerable, while someone stood outside with a camera and probably a gun. The message was clear. Adrienne knew where Maya went to school, knew where to find her, knew exactly how to hurt me. A second message arrived while I was still frozen. You should have stayed invisible, little waitress. Now you've made this personal. Return what you stole from me, or I'll take everything you love. Starting with her, return what I stole. She meant Adonis, like he was property, like his life was something she owned and I'd taken it by saving him. I was up and out of the room before I could think, running down the hallway in bare feet and borrowed cashmere. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to find him, needed to show him this threat, needed someone to tell me what to do. I found him in the kitchen of all places, standing at an industrial-sized coffee maker in jeans and a t-shirt, looking almost normal except for the gun sitting on the counter beside his mug. He saw my face and his entire demeanor shifted, going from relaxed to lethal in the space of a heartbeat. What happened? I shoved the phone at him, unable to speak. He took it, read the messages, and his expression went cold in a way that made me step back instinctively. This was the man people feared, the one who'd built an empire on blood and intimidation. When did this arrive? His voice was ice. Just now. I woke up and it was under my pillow. Under your... He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Then he was moving, striding toward the hallway, barking orders in rapid Spanish at guards who materialized from nowhere. I followed him, heart hammering. How did it get there? How did she... Someone inside, he said, fury barely contained. Someone on my staff, someone I trusted. The implications crashed over me. If Adrienne could get a phone into my room, she could get anything. A weapon, poison, a person. We weren't safe here. We'd never been safe. Adonis turned to one of his guards. Lock down the estate. Full sweep. Everyone gets vetted. Again. And find out who brought that phone inside before I find them myself. The guard nodded and disappeared. Adonis looked at me, and for the first time since this started, I saw something like regret in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I promised you'd be safe here. My sister is protected. I have 4 guards on her room, and 2 more monitoring the hallway. No one gets to her. But if someone inside is working for Adrienne, then I'll handle it. The cold was back. The lethal calm of a man who knew exactly what handle it meant. No one touches you. No one touches your sister. I don't care who I have to kill to make that true. I should have been terrified of him in that moment. Should have seen the violence in his promise and run. But all I felt was a terrible, overwhelming relief that anyone was willing to stand between me and the woman who wanted me dead. She knows we're here, I whispered. She's always known. He moved closer, and I caught the scent of coffee and something darker, something that reminded me of the restaurant. But knowing and getting through me are 2 very different things. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened further. What? The phone was delivered by a catering service. Someone ordered breakfast and had it included in the delivery. So we don't know who. We know exactly who. His eyes met mine, dark and dangerous. And now she knows I know, which means she's about to escalate. The golden cage suddenly felt a lot more fragile than it had an hour ago. I couldn't sleep. Again. 3 nights in the golden cage, and my body still refused to accept that the luxury meant safety. Every sound was a threat. Every shadow held danger. Every moment of quiet was just the space before something terrible happened. It was past 2 in the morning when I gave up and pulled on a robe over the silk pajamas someone had left in my closet. The house was supposed to be locked down, fully secured after the burner phone incident. Guards everywhere, new protocols. But that didn't stop my heart from racing every time I turned a corner. I'd intended to go to the kitchen for water. Instead, I found myself wandering through corridors I hadn't explored, past rooms I'd never seen. Until I noticed light spilling from beneath a door at the end of the east wing. I should have kept walking. Should have gone back to my room and left Adonis Chavarria to whatever kept him awake at night. But something pulled me forward. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need to not feel alone in the darkness. I knocked softly. No answer. I tried again, and when silence continued, I pushed the door open just enough to see inside. The study was all dark wood and leather. Walls lined with books that looked like they'd actually been read. Adonis sat behind a massive desk, tie discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, a tumbler of whiskey in one hand, and his phone in the other. He was staring at the screen like it contained answers to questions he didn't want to ask. "I'm sorry," I said, starting to back away. "I didn't mean to. Can't sleep either?" He looked up, and there was exhaustion in his face, the kind that came from carrying weight no one else could see. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that restaurant. I know the feeling. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Unless you'd rather be alone." I should have chosen alone. Should have maintained the distance between Waitress and cartel boss, between the woman he was protecting and the man who'd built his empire on violence. I sat. He poured whiskey into a second glass without asking and slid it across the desk. I took it, grateful for something to do with my hands. "How's your sister?" he asked, terrified, angry, convinced I'm not telling her everything. "Are you?" "No." I took a sip, the whiskey burning less than it had the first night. I don't know how to explain that we're trapped in a war between crime families because I couldn't let a stranger die. Not much of a stranger anymore. Something shifted in his expression, almost like amusement. "You've seen me bleed. That creates a certain intimacy." I hadn't thought about it like that, but he was right. When he'd covered me during the shooting, when his security had hustled us into the SUV, I'd seen him stripped of the careful control he usually wore like armor. I'd seen him human. "Can I ask you something?" The whiskey was making me brave again. "Depends on the question." "The tattoos!" I gestured vaguely toward his hands, his neck, the ink that disappeared beneath his collar. "What do they mean?" He was quiet for a long moment, rolling the whiskey in his glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, almost hesitant. "They're a map," he said, "of survival." He set down his glass and held up his right hand, turning it so I could see the cross inked across his knuckles. This one was the first. I was 15. My father had just been killed by a rival family. The cross was supposed to remind me that survival required sacrifice. His finger traced the script along his neck, words I couldn't read from where I sat. This one came after I took over the organization. It's a prayer my mother used to say. Protect me from my enemies and from myself. She knew what this life would do to me. Did it protect you? From my enemies, yes. From myself? He smiled, but it was bitter. That's still being decided. I wanted to see the words up close, wanted to trace the lines of ink and understand the man beneath them. But I stayed in my chair, hands wrapped around my glass, keeping the distance even as something between us started to narrow. "And Adrienne?" I asked. "Where does she fit into all of this?" His expression hardened. "She doesn't. She never did. But you married her." "I married an alliance." Our families had been at war for 3 generations. Her father proposed a merger, his connections, my infrastructure, a united front against the other cartels. Adrienne was the bargaining chip that sealed the deal. He picked up his glass again, drained it. I was 28, she was 25. We signed papers in front of lawyers and families and pretended it meant something beyond business. "Did you try to make it real?" "For about 6 months. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She made it clear from the beginning that love wasn't part of the contract. She had her life, I had mine, and as long as we showed up together for the important events, everyone was satisfied. That sounds lonely. It was practical. He poured more whiskey, offered me the bottle. I shook my head. Love is a liability in this world, Lisa. It gives people leverage. It creates weaknesses. Adrienne and I understood that. Then why does she want you dead? Because I started changing things, moving away from the parts of the business that required bloodshed, shutting down the operations that preyed on people who couldn't fight back. Her family saw it as weakness. She saw it as an opportunity to take control and run things the old way. He met my eyes. The profitable way. I thought about the woman in the yellow dress, cold and bored while ordering a hit on her own husband. She really doesn't care, does she? That you're a person. To her, I'm an asset that stopped performing as expected. You eliminate underperforming assets. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that intensity that made me feel exposed. That's why she'll never understand what you did. Why you warned me. What do you mean? You had nothing to gain. You didn't know me. Didn't owe me anything. You were invisible exactly where you wanted to be. Safe. His voice dropped. And you threw all of that away to save someone you assumed was a monster. I didn't assume. Yes, you did. A man like me, in a place like that, with a wife coordinating his murder, you knew what I was, and you helped anyway. The weight of his gaze was almost physical. I wanted to look away but couldn't. I couldn't just let you die, I said, echoing what I'd told him in the SUV. I don't know how to be the kind of person who could. Something changed in his face then. The hard edges softened. The control slipped just enough for me to see vulnerability underneath. I've spent 15 years building walls, he said quietly. Learning not to trust anyone. Not to let anyone close enough to hurt me. And then a waitress I've never met risks everything to slip me a note. He shook his head, almost incredulous. You broke something in me that night, Lisa. Some certainty I had about how the world works. I'm sorry. Don't be. He stood, moved around the desk, and sat on the edge, closer now. Close enough that I could see the scar through his eyebrow, the faint lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. You reminded me that not everyone operates on leverage and fear. That some people still believe in doing the right thing even when it costs them everything. My heart was beating too fast. The space between us felt charged, dangerous, in a completely different way than the bullets and threats. Your turn, he said. What? A question. You asked about my tattoos. Fair trade means I get to ask about your scars. I don't have any tattoos. Not those kind of scars. His eyes held mine. Why does a woman with your intelligence, your instincts, your courage, spend her life making herself invisible? The question hit harder than I'd expected. I looked down at my whiskey, at the way my hands trembled slightly around the glass. Because invisible is safe, I said. Invisible doesn't get noticed, doesn't get hurt, doesn't get left behind when things fall apart. Who left you? The answer came out before I could stop it. Everyone who was supposed to stay. He nodded slowly, like that made sense. Like he understood what it meant to build walls and call them wisdom. Well, he said after a moment, you're not invisible anymore. Not to me. And the terrifying thing was, I didn't want to be. The news broke on the 5th morning. Maya found it first. Scrolling on the tablet one of the guards had given her sanitized, monitored, but connected enough to see the world we'd been cut off from. Lisa. Her voice was sharp with panic. You need to see this. I took the tablet from her, shaking hands, and stared at the screen. My own face looked back at me, my employee photo from the restaurant, the one they'd taken for my ID badge. I looked younger in it, hopeful, like I still believed keeping my head down would keep me safe. The headline beneath it read, Waitress missing after restaurant shooting. Wife of alleged crime boss fears for her safety. Alleged, I muttered. That's generous. I scrolled through the article, each word a carefully constructed lie. Adrienne Dianda, described as the devastated wife of suspected cartel leader Adonis Chavarria, had given an exclusive interview to every major outlet. The photos showed her in black, eyes red from crying, looking like a woman who'd watched her husband commit an unthinkable crime. She seemed like such a sweet girl, the quotes read. Always so kind when she served us. I can't imagine what he threatened her with to make her leave with him. I just pray the police find her before. The sentence trailed off, letting readers imagine the worst. There was footage too. Shaky cell phone video from the restaurant, showing the chaos after the shooting. And there, clear as day, was Adonis pulling me through the kitchen, my face visible for just a moment before we disappeared through the service exit. Kidnapped, that's what they were calling it. She's good, I said, handing the tablet back to Maya. I'll give her that. What are you going to do? Nothing. We stay here. We stay quiet. This is exactly what she wants to force us out into the open where she can get to us. But Adrienne wasn't done. By noon, there were vigils. A mother of a coworker gave a tearful interview about how I'd been saving money to help my sister through college, how I'd never missed a shift, how I didn't deserve whatever was happening to me. The narrative was airtight. Innocent victim, dangerous criminal, race against time. The police had no choice but to respond. By evening, there were statements from the commissioner, promises of a thorough investigation, assurances that they were doing everything in their power to locate me safely. Adonis watched it all from his study, his expression carved from stone. He didn't rage or curse. He just sat there, absorbing every calculated move in Adrienne's play. "She's backing me into a corner," he said finally. "If I return you, she wins you testify against me under pressure, or you disappear the moment you're outside my protection. If I keep you, I'm guilty of exactly what she's claiming. So what do? We wait." He turned to look at me, and we prepare for her next move. It came 2 days later. I was in the library, trying to distract myself with a book I couldn't focus on, when one of Adonis's men appeared at the door. "Someone wants to speak with you." His face was grim. "Detective. Says it's unofficial. Says he's alone." Adonis materialized behind him, jaw tight. "No. He's at the gate," the guard continued. "Says if we don't let him talk to her, he'll get a warrant. Says he's trying to help." "It's a trap," Adonis said flatly. "Probably." I stood, setting down the book. "But if I don't talk to him, it looks like you're holding me prisoner." Which is exactly what Adrienne wants. We stared at each other, the weight of impossible choices settling between us. "I'll do it," I said, "but I do it my way." 20 minutes later, I sat in a small room off the main entrance, nothing like an interrogation room, but not quite comfortable either. The detective across from me was mid-40s, tired eyes, cheap suit. His badge said Martinez. "Miss Gunnan." He had a recorder on the table between us. "I want to help you, but I need you to be honest with me." "About what?" "About what happened that night. About whether you're here by choice." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "If he's threatening you, if he's holding something over you, we can protect you. We can protect your sister." I thought about the burner phone, the photo of Maya's dorm, the promise that next time, they wouldn't miss. "I'm here by choice," I said. "Miss Gunnan, Lisa. And I mean it. Adonis Chevarria saved my life that night. Someone tried to kill him in that restaurant, and when they missed, I became a witness. The only reason I'm alive right now is because he brought me here." Martinez's expression shifted, just slightly. "You're saying someone other than Mr. Chevarria was the target of the shooting?" "I'm saying the narrative you've been fed is a lie." "A lie told by whom?" "By the person who actually wants me dead." He sat back, studying me. The recorder was still running. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth. Can you prove it?" I thought about the note I'd slipped into Adonis's menu. The warning that had saved his life. "Not in a way that wouldn't put me in more danger than I'm already in." "Then help me understand." His voice was reasonable, patient. "Why would Mrs. Deonda want you dead?" "You're just a waitress. Just a waitress." The phrase that had defined my whole life, suddenly weaponized. Because I know something she doesn't want anyone to know. Which is, that she's not the victim in this story. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and turned off the recorder. The red light went dark. "Off the record," he said. "I'm going to give you some advice. The kind of advice that could save your life." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. "Mrs. Deonda has a lot of friends. Important friends. The kind who can make evidence disappear. Who can make witnesses disappear." He met my eyes. "She's willing to be very generous to people who help her, and very unforgiving to people who don't." There it was. The real reason for this meeting. "She sent you," I said. "I'm just telling you how things are. You're telling me to betray the man who saved my life, and hand him over to the woman who tried to have him killed. I'm telling you to be smart, to think about your sister, about what happens to her if you keep making the wrong choices." He slid a card across the table. "My number. When you're ready to do the right thing, call me." I looked at the card. At the name embossed in black ink. At the small notch in the corner, the kind you'd make if you were marking which cards had been distributed, keeping track of your network. "How much is she paying you?" I asked. His smile was cold. "Enough." I stood, leaving the card on the table. "Tell Adrienne I'm not interested in her generosity. And I'm not afraid of her threats. You should be." He stood too, buttoning his jacket. Because the next person she sends won't be as polite as me. I left him there and walked back through the house, my hands steady even though my heart was hammering. Adonis was waiting in the hallway, his security chief beside him. "Well?" he asked. "He's on her payroll. She wanted him to pressure me into turning on you. And I told him no." Something shifted in Adonis's expression. Not surprise, exactly, but something deeper. Like I'd just proven something he'd hoped was true but hadn't dared to believe. "She'll escalate," he said quietly. "You know that." "I know. You could still leave. I could arrange protection, get you and Maya out of the country, somewhere she can't reach you. Running means spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." I met his eyes. "I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of running from people like her. People like her are dangerous. So are people like you," I said. "But you're on my side." He almost smiled. "Almost. Yes, I am." His security chief cleared his throat. "Sir, we have a problem. The detective's leaving, but there are news crews setting up outside the gates." Someone tipped them off. Of course they did. Adrian's play wasn't just about pressuring me. It was about forcing Adonis into the light, making him visible, making him vulnerable. "Let them film," Adonis said. "Let them see I'm not hiding. And let them see she's still here by choice." "You want me to make a statement?" I asked. "I want you to do whatever you think is right." His hand brushed mine, brief but deliberate. "But if you're going to stand with me, I need you to understand what that means. Once you publicly choose my side, there's no going back. Adrian will come after you with everything she has." I thought about the detective, the threats, the trap Adrian was building around us. And I thought about the man who'd covered me with his body during the shooting, who'd brought my sister to safety, who'd shown me that monsters could choose to be something else. "Good," I said. "Let her come." Adonis made the call at dawn, standing at the window of his study with the kind of stillness that came before violence. I watched from the doorway, coffee growing cold in my hands, as he spoke in rapid Spanish to someone who had the power to either end this war or escalate it beyond return. When he hung up, the silence stretched long enough that I thought he might have forgotten I was there. "It's done," he said finally. "The Deanda family has agreed to a meeting. Neutral ground. Tomorrow night." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm walking into a room with the people who want me dead and trying to convince them that killing me would be bad for business." He turned to face me, and there was something dangerous in his expression. "It means this ends one way or another." I set down my coffee. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay here. Stay safe. Let me handle this." "That's not what you really want to say." He was quiet for a long moment, jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to release. "I need you to come with me." My heart kicked against my ribs. "Into the meeting?" "Yes. With the people who've been trying to kill me for a week." "Yes. Are you insane?" "Probably." He moved closer, and I could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight of everything he'd been carrying. "But you're the only proof I have that Adrian planned the hit. Your testimony is the only thing that can turn her family against her. They won't believe me. I'm nobody. You're the woman who saved my life at the cost of your own safety. You're the witness to her phone call. And you're the person she's been desperately trying to silence." His hand came up, fingertips brushing my jaw in a touch so gentle it felt like a question. "You're everything, Lisa. You just don't see it yet." I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him this was suicide, that walking into a meeting with cartel heads was asking to be killed. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. I trusted him. Somewhere in the chaos and fear and late-night conversations, I'd started to believe that Adonis Chavarria would burn the world before he let anything happen to me. "What do I need to do?" I asked. Relief flickered across his face, there and gone. "Tell them what you heard. But there's more." He moved to his desk, pulling out a leather folder. 3 nights ago you mentioned you'd studied accounting in college before you had to drop out. 2 years. I had to leave when my parents died and the money ran out. Those 2 years are about to save both our lives. He opened the folder, revealing pages of financial records, spreadsheets, transaction logs. I've suspected for months that Adrian was siphoning money from our joint accounts, moving it offshore, building her own war chest. But she's good at hiding it, and my people couldn't find the pattern. "You want me to look at these? I need you to find what she's hiding. If we can prove she's been stealing from both families, her father will have no choice but to disown her. It's the only language these men understand: betrayal of money." I pulled the folder closer, scanning the numbers. It had been 4 years since I'd done anything like this. But the patterns were still there, waiting to be seen. I spent the next 18 hours buried in those records, cross-referencing accounts, tracking the ghost transactions she'd disguised as legitimate expenses. And I found it. All of it. Millions of dollars, moved in careful increments over 3 years, dispersed through shell companies and offshore accounts. She'd been planning this for longer than any of us had realized. When the time came to leave, I had a folder of my own, annotated, highlighted, irrefutable. Maya begged me not to go. She stood in my room while I dressed in clothes someone had selected, elegant but understated, expensive but not ostentatious, and told me I was making a mistake. "You don't owe him this," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I owe myself this," I said, turning from the mirror. "I'm tired of being powerless. This is the only way it ends." The drive took 40 minutes, winding through the city to a restaurant I'd never heard of in a neighborhood I'd never visited. Adonis's hand found mine in the darkness of the SUV, fingers lacing through mine. "If anything goes wrong, you run," he said. "We walk in together, we walk out together," I replied. The restaurant was closed to the public, its elegant dining room transformed into a war room. A long table dominated the center, already occupied by 5 men who looked like they'd been carved from granite and dressed in expensive suits. At the head sat an older man with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice, Roberto Dianda, and beside him, looking like a grieving widow in black silk, was Adriani. Her eyes found mine the moment we entered, and her expression shifted through surprise, fury, and something that might have been fear before settling back into cold composure. "You brought the waitress," Roberto said, his voice like gravel. "How theatrical." "I brought the witness," Adonis corrected, guiding me forward. "The woman who can tell you exactly what your daughter said before she tried to have me killed." We sat across from them, and I felt the weight of every gaze in that room. "Miss Gunnan," Roberto said, his attention fixing on me like a spotlight. "My daughter claims you've been coerced, that my son-in-law has threatened you into making false accusations." "That's exactly what happened," Adrian interjected smoothly. "She's clearly terrified. Anyone can see she's been manipulated." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But not of him." I looked directly at Adrian. "I'm terrified of you. Because I heard what you said in that bathroom, and I know what you're capable of. This is absurd." Adrian's laugh was perfectly calibrated, dismissive, but tinged with hurt. "Father, she's a waitress. A nobody who saw an opportunity to insert herself into our lives. She probably wrote that note herself for attention." "Then explain the phone records," Adonis said quietly, placing a document on the table. "The call you made at 8:43 p.m. from the restaurant bathroom to Diego Morales, one of your father's enforcers. The call that lasted 2 minutes and 17 seconds. The same Diego who was arrested 2 days later trying to leave the country." Adrian's composure cracked, just slightly. "I make a lot of calls. That proves nothing." "You're right," I said, opening my folder. "That alone proves nothing. But these do." I slid the first page across the table to Roberto. "This is a transfer from your joint operating account with the Chavaria organization, March 15th, last year, listed as equipment maintenance. Except there was no equipment purchased that month." Roberto picked up the page, studying it. "The money was transferred to a shell company called Apex Holdings," I continued, sliding over another page, "which then dispersed it to 3 offshore accounts. I've tracked 17 similar transactions over the past 3 years. Total amount," I slid over the final summary, $8.7 million, all of it moved by Adrian. "That's a lie." But Adrian's voice had lost its confidence. "The account numbers are all here," I said, my hands steady despite my racing heart. "The signatures are digital, but they're authenticated. And the offshore accounts? They're all registered to a trust with one beneficiary." I looked at Roberto. "Your daughter." The silence in the room was absolute. Roberto studied the documents, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at one of his men. "Verify this." The man pulled out a phone, made a call, spoke in rapid Spanish. 3 minutes later, he nodded to Roberto. "It's accurate," he said quietly. "You stole from me." Roberto's voice was soft, almost conversational. "You stole from both families while wearing the mask of a loyal daughter. Father, I can explain. You attempted to murder your husband without approval. You orchestrated a public spectacle that threatened our relationship with the Chavaria family, and now I discover you've been embezzling for years." He set down the papers with careful precision. "There is no explanation that matters. Everything I did was to strengthen our position. Everything you did was to strengthen yourself." Roberto stood, and everyone else at the table tensed. You are no longer a Deonda. You will take nothing from this family. You will speak to no one in this organization. And if you attempt any retaliation against Mr. Chavarria, his wife-to-be, or her sister, I will personally ensure you understand the consequences. Wife-to-be. The words hung in the air, unexpected and impossible. Adrian's face went white. You're disowning me. I'm cutting out a cancer before it kills us all. Roberto looked at Adonis. The marriage is dissolved. The alliance stands. And you have my word no Deonda will touch the girl or her family. Father, please. Leave. Now. Before I change my mind about letting you leave at all. Adrienne stood on shaking legs. Her mask finally shattered. She looked at me with pure hatred. You've destroyed everything, she whispered. No, I said quietly. I just showed them what you really are. She left, flanked by 2 of Roberto's men who would ensure she truly departed. The door closed behind her, and the tension in the room shifted. The financial records, Roberto said, looking at me with something that might have been respect. That was clever work. I studied accounting, I said, before I had to drop out. A waste. He glanced at Adonis. You should marry this one for real. She's worth 10 of my daughter. Adonis's hand found mine under the table. That's the plan. We walked out together, and only when we were in the SUV, doors locked and moving, did I allow myself to shake. Wife-to-be, I asked. I had to give him a reason to protect you that he'd understand. Adonis pulled me close. Family is sacred to him. If he thinks you're going to be my wife, you're untouchable. And if I said I actually wanted that to be true? He went still. Do you? I thought about the past week. The terror and the danger, and the man who'd stood between me and death at every turn. The late-night conversations and the way he'd brought my sister to safety, and the careful way he'd never once made me feel like I owed him anything. Ask me when this is really over, I said. When we're both safe and free and alive. Deal, he whispered, and pressed his lips to my forehead. But Lisa? The answer better be yes. For the first time in a week, I smiled. We'll see. 3 days after the meeting, the papers arrived. I found them on the breakfast table in the morning sun, arranged in neat stacks beside a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Passports, new ones, with names I didn't recognize. Plane tickets to Zurich. Bank account information for funds that would last Maya and me the rest of our lives if we were careful. A fresh start. A clean slate. Everything I'd once dreamed about when I was serving overpriced wine to people who never saw me. Freedom. I picked up the passport with my new name Elizabeth Grant and studied the photo. It was me, but not me. The woman in that picture looked like someone who'd never worked a double shift, never worried about rent, never overheard a murder plot in a bathroom stall. They're ready whenever you are. I turned to find Adonis in the doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a black t-shirt, looking more human than I'd ever seen him. The tattoos on his hands and neck seemed softer in the morning light. Less like warnings and more like stories I wanted to spend years learning to read. The flight leaves tomorrow night, he continued, moving into the kitchen. I'll have a team escort you to the airport. Once you're in Europe, you'll be met by people I trust. They'll help you get settled, find a place to live, enroll Maya in university there if she wants. You've thought of everything. I always do. He poured himself coffee, his movements practiced and precise. There's enough money to last decades if you're smart about it. You'll never have to work another serving shift. Never have to smile at people who treat you like furniture. Never have to be invisible again. I set down the passport. And what about you? What about me? Where will you be while Maya and I are living our new lives in Switzerland? Here, rebuilding, cleaning up the mess Adrienne left behind, making sure the alliance holds. He took a sip of coffee, not meeting my eyes, living the life I chose a long time ago. Alone. I've always been alone, Lisa. I'm good at it. That's not an answer. He finally looked at me, and there was something raw in his expression. Something that looked like pain. What do you want me to say? That I want you to stay? That the past week has been the first time in 15 years I felt like something other than a weapon people point at their problems? His voice dropped. That I wake up thinking about you and go to sleep wondering how I'm supposed to let you go. My breath caught. But wanting you to stay would be selfish, he continued. Would be asking you to give up safety for a life that's nothing but danger and compromise and blood. You deserve better than that. You deserve Switzerland and university for your sister, and a man who doesn't have to check for bombs under his car every morning. You're right, I said quietly. That would be selfish. Something in his face closed off. Walls going back up. The car will be ready whenever. but I've never been very good at doing what's smart. I picked up the plane tickets, all that expensive paper and careful planning, and walked to the gas stove. I turned on the burner, watched the blue flame leap to life. I've spent my whole life making the safe choice, keeping my head down, being invisible, not making waves. Lisa, what are you? I held the tickets over the flame. The edges caught, curling and blackening, orange fire consuming the promise of escape. And you know what that got me? A life so small I could barely breathe in it. A sister who thought safety was the same as happiness, and the absolute certainty that I would die without ever having really lived. The tickets burned in my hand until I had to drop them in the sink, where they dissolved into ash and smoke. Adonis stared at the remains, then at me, something like hope and fear warring in his expression. You just burned your way out. No. I moved closer to him, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat coming off his body. I just burned my way in. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying I didn't save your life just to spend the rest of mine wondering what could have been. I'm saying I'm tired of taking orders and serving people who don't see me. I'm saying... I reached up, my hand finding the side of his face, feeling the rough edge of his jaw under my palm. I'm not taking your order anymore, Adonis. I'm taking my place. Your place. His voice was rough, almost broken. And where is that? Here, with you. In whatever this life becomes. I held his gaze. I'm not naive. I know what you are, what you've done. I know this world is dangerous and bloody, and nothing like the fairy tales. But I also know that you're the first person who's ever made me feel like I'm worth fighting for, like I'm worth protecting, like I matter. You do matter. That's why you should. Run? Hide? Spend the rest of my life being safe and small and grateful? I shook my head. I'd rather be terrified and alive than comfortable and invisible. I'd rather stand beside you in the fire than watch from across an ocean while you face it alone. His hand came up, covering mine against his face. If you stay, there's no going back. The danger doesn't end just because Adrienne's gone. There will always be someone else. Always another threat. Always another reason to look over your shoulder. Then we'll look over our shoulders together. Your sister. Maya is 20 years old. She gets to make her own choices. And I'll make sure she has every opportunity, every safety net, everything she needs. But I can't live my life for her anymore. I can't keep shrinking myself to fit into a box labeled responsible older sister when what I really want is standing right in front of me. And what do you want? His voice was barely a whisper. You, this. A life that's mine instead of one I'm just surviving. I stepped closer, close enough that there was no space left between us. I want late nights in your study. I want to understand what your tattoos mean. I want to help you build something better than what came before. I want. He kissed me before I could finish, his hand sliding into my hair, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. I kissed him back, pouring everything into it, the fear, the hope, the absolute certainty that this was the right choice, even if it was the dangerous one. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. You're insane, he said. Probably. You could die. I could die in Switzerland too. At least here I'd die as myself. He laughed, the sound raw and almost painful. You're going to destroy me, Lisa Gunnan. Good. You could use some destroying. All those walls you've built, all that control. I traced the line of his jaw, the edge of the cross tattooed on his hand. Someone needs to remind you what it's like to feel something. I feel everything when I'm with you. That's the problem. That's the point. He pulled back just enough to look at me properly, his hands framing my face. If you stay, I want it to be real. Not just protection or gratitude or adrenaline. I want you to be mine because you choose it, not because you're trapped here. I'm choosing it. Right now, today, tomorrow, every day after. I smiled, feeling something like joy break through the fear. I'm choosing you, Adonis Chevaria. All of you. The tattoos and the scars and the terrible coffee you make in the morning. My coffee isn't terrible. Your coffee is awful, but I'll teach you how to make it properly. I kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter. Along with everything else, I'm going to teach you about letting someone in. And what do I teach you? How to stop being invisible, how to take up space, how to be the kind of woman who burns plane tickets and chooses danger over safety. I grinned. How to be terrifying. You're already terrifying. You just didn't know it yet. Behind us, someone cleared their throat. We broke apart to find Maya standing in the doorway, arms crossed, an expression of exasperated affection on her face. "So I take it we're not going to Switzerland?" she asked. "You can if you want to," I said. "The money's still yours. The passport, the new identity, all of it. You can have the safe life, Maya. You've earned it." She studied me for a long moment, then looked at Adonis. "If she stays, I stay. Someone needs to make sure my sister doesn't get herself killed doing something noble and stupid." "I can work with that," Adonis said. Something like relief in his voice. "I'll make sure you have security. A place at any university you want. Everything you need." "What I need," Maya said firmly, "is for both of you to stop making decisions about my life without asking me. I'm not a kid anymore. I get a say in this." I laughed, the sound surprising even to me. "Fair enough. So what do you say?" "I say we're gunnins. We don't run from fights. Even when we probably should." She moved into the kitchen, picking up the burned remains of the plane tickets from the sink. "Though maybe next time, we could discuss major life choices before setting expensive things on fire?" "Noted," I said. Maya looked between us, then shook her head with a smile. "You two are insane. You know that, right?" "We've been told," Adonis said, his arm sliding around my waist, pulling me against his side where I fit like I'd been made to be there. "Good," Maya said, "because I think insane is exactly what this family needs." "This family?" The words settled around us, warm and impossible and more right than anything I'd felt in years. I looked up at Adonis, at the man who'd protected me, who'd valued my mind as much as my testimony, who'd given me the option to run and respected me enough to let me choose to stay. "So what now?" I asked. "Now?" He pressed a kiss to my temple. "Now we build something worth staying for. Together." "Together," I agreed. And finally, I wasn't invisible anymore. Thank you so much for joining Lisa and Adonis on this thrilling journey from danger to devotion. I hope their story kept you on the edge of your seat and reminded you that sometimes the bravest choice is to stop hiding and claim the life you truly want. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video to help others discover it. Comment below and tell me your favorite moment. Was it the bathroom stall revelation, the daring escape, or that final choice to burn the tickets? Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next thrilling story. Coming up next, more heart-pounding romance, dangerous choices, and unforgettable characters who refuse to stay invisible. See you in the next story.